G'day so-and-sos, welcome to my sewing room. My name's Kathy and today I wanted to do a quick video on safety in the sewing room. So when we are learning sewing or even more experienced sewers, there's a lot of things at the cutting table and over at the machine that can cause us a fair bit of mischief. So I'm just going to go over some basic things today on what we can do to keep ourselves a little bit more safe in the sewing room. Some of it might seem obvious to you, but I've found that we tend to get a little bit lax. So the reminder on some of the more basic stuff might be good. Okay, let's get started. So let's go over some of the more bitey things in our sewing room. So I have a rotary cutter, seam ripper, a different type of seam ripper, which is just a razor, which is very sharp, and scissors. So it might seem fairly obvious to you to keep your fingers away from the bitey ends of these, but we do tend to get a little bit lax with it. So obviously with our seam rippers, especially that one, I mean, that thing is sharp. You always want to be cutting away from yourself and never towards yourself. It's really easy, especially when we're using one of these and we're, trying to get stuff unpicked, to cut towards yourself, and you can end up putting it through your finger or your hand or whatever, and it's not fun. So always concentrate on thinking about cutting away from yourself, even with something as little as a seam ripper. With our scissors, you want to get in the habit of laying your scissors along your cutting table and moving the top one as you go. I found that even when I'm busy or in a hurry, I'll pick up my fabric or interfacing and sort of hold it in front of me and then put it underneath and cut. And you run the risk of snipping into your digits, and you don't want to do that. So it's a good idea to have paper weights on your fabric, pattern weights on your fabric as you cut. Have your hands steadying it out of the way, and then having that bottom blade on the table under your fabric as you go and moving that top one. It also puts a little bit less wear and tear on your hands. Do you like my new scissors? Aren't they pretty? Okay, let's go over rotary cutters. Now these things are bitey, they are sharp, and there's a few things that we can do to keep ourselves a little bit safer when using these. So you really want to concentrate on always having a new or new-ish blade in there. If you let your blade go blunt, then you end up having to use a little bit more pressure. The blade doesn't turn as well and sort of catches, and that can lead to accidents. But when it's nice and sharp, you don't need very much pressure at all. When you're using it, I always steeple my fingers. I'll grab a ruler. There we go. So I'll place my ruler over my fabric, steeple my fingers like that. So if I have it flat and my blade is in, if I have it flat and I slip, then I'm going to come up over, and I don't want to do that. If my fingers are steepled, there is less chance of that happening. So I always line up, because a lot of what I do is bag making, so a lot of straight edges, line up my ruler on the fabric. If I need to, I'll put some weights on there, and I actually use 1 kilo weights, like literal weights off a gym set. But you can make your own pattern weights with sand or whatever else, so you can buy little ring ones, but I find like having that extra weight there means that it doesn't move. So I'll put some weights on there as well, pop my blade out, and then line it up with the side of my ruler and cut like that. Before I put it down on the table, always retract the blade. If you've seen the video where I teach Adrian how to make a bag, it's what I told him to do. And I told him to do it 1,000,000 times, and it wasn't that he was ignoring me, it's just that he wasn't in the habit of it. So he would pop the blade out, cut, and then put it down on the table. And I had to keep reminding him to put it in. So it is a habit that you need to practice to get into, but it is so important. If you put it down with the blade out and you put it down on the table, you go to pick it up, you could grab it by the blade, or if you put fabric over the top of it, which I know when I'm cutting out, there's just stuff everywhere. And so if you put fabric over the top of it and then grab it or whatever, then you're gonna do self-damage. The other thing with rotary cutters is we do tend to, especially when we're making clothing or something like that, we tend to use the floor as our space to cut out on. And I met a lady that was doing that. She was quilting or something, had used a rotary cutter, left the blade out and then put it on the floor, had fabric over the top of it. And yeah, she's now got 9 toes. So you really want to be careful to put your blade back in all the time. And if you are cutting out on the floor, then think about making it a habit that you cut and then you put your rotary cutter up somewhere high, just in case you do forget to pop it back in. So I'm going to change the camera angle and we're going to talk about how to change out one of these. Okay, so I saw a comment online not long ago that said that this woman had never changed the blade in her rotary cutter, which to me just blows my mind. I change it, you know, sort of maybe every project or every 2 projects so that it's nice and sharp. But you can even see now how it's got a fair bit of lint and stuff on there. When it gets like that, it's going to sort of gum up a little bit and your blade isn't going to turn as easily and it's going to catch and it's going to sort of fray your fabric a little bit as well, but it's also not safe. So I'm going to pop my index finger on the front there, undo the nut at the back, turn it back over so it's not falling into my hand, and push that up with my other finger, and just pop that out. And you can see just how much gunk is on there. And I've only just recently changed it, but that will sort of stop it turning smoothly. Okay, grab this bit, turn it up, and then just pop that blade off. Grab a new one, and I'm being careful just to always lay it flat. Now these guys, it looks like you've only got 1 or 2, but they're actually stuck together with this oil. So you have to slide them apart. So make sure you're only getting 1. And then pop it back on there, back through, and then holding it in place like that. I probably should even pop that in so that blade isn't hanging out, and pop the nut on, and then I'm ready to go again. Now you don't want to do up this nut too tight. If you do it too tight, when you pop your blade out and you try and cut, your blade won't turn. So it needs to turn really easily for it to cut easily. If it's too tight, it won't turn and you're just running that blade over the top of your fabric will catch and rip and tear. So pop these ones back in. Now to dispose of this guy, what I'll do is I'll get up and I'll find some packing tape that I've got, so a thick, strong tape, and I'll pick it up with the tape, wrap it up in the tape, and then pop it in the bin. Now I say it in all of my videos, I'm sure I've said it in pretty much every one I've ever made, never get your fingers near the needle. So I use one of these guys. This is called a little purple thing, T-H-A-N-G. You can get the original of these, and this one is, I can see it's stamped on there, but you can get unbranded ones, we'll call them, off Temu for a couple of bucks. So this one was around, I don't know, $10, $11, I guess, Australian, maybe a little more. And the ones off Temu, you can get a pack of 4 or 5 for a couple of dollars. So I have them absolutely everywhere. It's got a little measuring thing on one end, so I can measure my 1/4 inch, a little thing to put elastic in, and this is the end that we're going to be using now. So when I sew, I will have one hand steadying my fabric or feeling where my zipper tape is or feeling where my hardware is, guiding my fabric. This one is also guiding my fabric and smoothing out any wrinkles or anything else, but I'm not getting my fingers near that needle. And it wasn't hard to get used to using one of these either. It's really quite easy to do. You just have to practice a little bit and just guide your fabric through like it's your finger. And you can pull at your zipper tape, whatever. So you don't want to get your fingers anywhere near that bitey end. Like if one of my regulars just put up a comment saying that she actually copped one through the finger and had to go to hospital and get it taken out. I imagine that hurt. You don't want to do that. So make sure that you always use one of these, because no matter how long you've been sewing, no matter how good you are, accidents happen. Now, whenever you change out your thread, your bobbin or your needle, your machine goes off. Now, I did do a video ages ago on one of my other machines where I was showing people how to change the foot or something. And I said you always have to do that. You always have to turn it off. But I'm like, but I'm going to leave it on because I need the light on so you can see what I'm doing. And I think about that when I've watched that back and just gone, you know what, that was stupid. Like, never have an excuse to yourself as to why you leave your machine on. Always turn it off when you're rethreading, putting a bobbin in, because even when you're putting a bobbin in, if you press something and that needle comes down, then it could hit you. So I'm going to change out this needle with my little screwdriver. So my machine is off. And I'm going to take that needle out because you don't want to be sewing with a blunt needle. And the way I dispose of my needles is with an old spice jar. I'll pop it in there, pop the lid on nice and secure. And then when I've got a fair few in there, I'll whack some packing tape or some sort of strong tape over the top and then throw it in the bin. I don't want loose needles. I don't want to reuse my needles. It's very tempting if I'm changing out fabric and I want to go from a light needle to a heavier needle to go, well, I'm going to use that one in a moment or tomorrow or whatever. If I'm using it like, you know, in 5 minutes, and I'll pop it to the side in a little magnetic case and use it in a minute, but I don't leave them for the next project. It's too easy for them to get knocked over. I did buy a little magnetic case and I started doing it. I started putting them in the magnetic case, thinking that, you know, I could just get it out and use it the next day. And then I knocked over a heap of stuff at my machine. The magnetic case went on the floor, the needle spilled out, and I've been paranoid ever since. So same thing with my pins. I've got a pin cushion and my dog got hold of it and shook it because he thought it looked like a toy, and pins went everywhere. So now I have them always in a case. So I hope that's given you a few little tips and a few little reminders on how to keep our digits and other body parts safe in the sewing room. So be safe, have fun, and remember, it's only fabric. We can always buy more. In fact, you deserve it. Go and buy some for yourself for next week's project. Okay, peeps. See ya. Bugger.